Hi, welcome to Storytime with Gigi. Today we're going to be reading a Disney Pixar Monsters University story. This is from the Wonderful World of Reading series. I got this book at the Dollar Tree. The story was by Lisa Marsoli and illustrations are by Fabio Laguna, Lori Tominski, Adrian Brown, Jeff Jenny, Frank Anduiza, and the Disney Storybook Artists. When Mike Wazowski was 6 years old, his class took a field trip to Monsters, Inc. Scream energy to power the whole monster world was collected there. Mike secretly followed a scarer through the door into the human world. He watched as the scarer frightened a child. It was awesome. From that moment on, young Mike dreamed of being a scarer someday. And there he is. Years later, Mike's dream led him to the scaring program at Monsters University, MU. Mike was excited, but at his first scaring class, Dean Hardscrabble announced that anyone who failed the final exam would be out of the scaring program. After all, not every monster was as scary as the legendary Dean Hardscrabble. Later, while Mike eagerly answered a question, another student interrupted him with a huge roar. It was James P. Sullivan, Sully for short. Mike was annoyed. He thought the big blue monster was a show-off. There's Sully. And there's Mike, annoyed. Mike studied hard all semester. Sully joined a fraternity, Roar Omega Roar, and had fun. As a result, Mike did well in class. Sully didn't. By final exam time, Mike and Sully didn't like each other at all. They got into a roaring face-off right before the test. That led to Sully knocking over Dean Hardscrabble's prized scream can and destroying it. Yikes. As punishment, Dean Hardscrabble gave Mike and Sully their final exam on the spot, and she failed them. Although they were allowed to stay at Monsters University, they had to leave the scaring program. The Roar Omega Roars kicked Sully out of their fraternity, too. Mike wouldn't give up his dream. The next semester, he joined the Uzma Kappa fraternity in order to enter the Scare Games, a week-long competition that would determine the scariest monsters on campus. Then he made a deal with Dean Hardscrabble. If the Uzma Kappa fraternity won, they would be allowed into the scaring program, and she agreed. But if the OKs lost, Mike had to leave Monsters University. Sully wanted in on the deal and joined the OKs too. Mike was furious. The Uzma Kappas welcomed, or the OKs welcomed Mike and Sully to their fraternity house. They were excited about entering the Scare Games. Unfortunately, the Uzma Kappas were friendly, cute, and cuddly. They definitely did not look like scarers. During the first event, the Toxicity Challenge, Mike and Sully were so busy competing with each other that they left their team behind. The OKs were almost eliminated. The next event, Avoid the Parent, was held in the school library. They came close to losing the event when Sully fell off a ladder, but the rest of the OKs worked together and got the team flag. Okay, so they're trying to get that. The OKs were happy, and they actually got invited to a mid-games party at the Roar fraternity house. The Roars pretended to be friendly until they dumped rainbow-colored paint, confetti, and flowers on the OKs, making them look cuter than ever. Real scarers look like us, not like you, teased the leader of the Roars. The OKs were ready to give up, but Mike sneaked them into Monsters, Inc. for some inspiration. See what they all have in common? Asked Mike as they watched the scares at work. Not really, a pink monster named Squishy answered. Exactly, exclaimed Mike. Now the OKs could see that scarers came in all shapes and sizes, and Mike and Sully realized they had to start working as a team. Mike started training the OKs every day. He was a great coach. The OKs passed the next two scare games events. This meant they were going to the finals with the Roars. But the night before the finals, Sully was worried. Mike knew everything about scaring, but he just wasn't scary. So Sully gave Mike some last-minute lessons. Mike felt confident, but Sully still had his doubts. The next day at the final event, each member of the OKs and the Roars had to enter a scare simulator and perform a scare on a robot child. The first 4 OK members did well. But after 4 rounds, they were still far behind the Roars. That meant Mike and Sully would have to get big scores for the OKs to win. Sully earned a great score. Now it was up to Mike. He gave the most heartfelt roar of his life. The robot child let out an enormous scream. The OKs won the scare games. Later, Mike discovered that Sully had cheated. He had changed Mike's setting on the simulator from hard to easy. "You don't think I'm scary," Mike said to Sully. He felt hurt and let down, and so did the OKs. Mike decided to prove that he really was scary. He sneaked into the Door Tech lab, powered up a door to the human world, and walked through it. An alarm blared across campus. What Mike was doing was very dangerous. Inside the human child's room, Mike crept up to a youngster's bed, leaped up, and roared as loudly as he could. The child sat up in bed and smiled. "You're funny," she said. Mike suddenly felt many eyes watching him. He wasn't in a bedroom. He was in a cabin full of campers. Is it like a summer camp? Meanwhile, Sully guessed what Mike was up to and ran to the lab. When Sully got inside, Dean Hardscrabble was holding back a crowd. The OKs distracted the guards so that Sully could slip through the door and rescue Mike. When Sully entered the cabin, it was empty. Then he spotted an open window and suspected that Mike had escaped through it. Sully found Mike sitting by a lake. "You were right," Mike told him. "They weren't scared of me." "You aren't the only failure here," Sully admitted, explaining he had messed things up his entire life. Suddenly, Rangers appeared. There was no time to lose. Mike and Sully raced back to the cabin to return to Monsters University. There was just one problem. Hardscrabble had powered down the door. Mike and Sully were trapped. Then Mike had an idea. If they could really scare the Rangers, they might create enough scream energy to power the door back up. When the Rangers entered the cabin, Mike and Sully set up their big scare. They clawed the walls, fluttered the curtains, slammed the door, and toppled over the bunk beds. Then on Mike's cue, Sully leaped out with a ferocious roar. The Rangers screamed and screamed as the huge blue monster loomed over them. In the lab, Hardscrabble watched in disbelief as Mike and Sully exploded through the door. "How did you do this?" Hardscrabble asked, amazed. Just then, agents from the Child Detection Agency burst into the room and they led Mike and Sully away. Because Mike and Sully had broken so many rules, they were kicked out of Monster University. However, Dean Hardscrabble allowed the rest of the OKs into the scaring program for their great performance in the scare games. Before Mike and Sully left MU, Mike had seen an ad for mailroom workers at Monsters, Inc. They got the jobs and quickly moved up in the company. After years of hard work, Mike and Sully became the first scare team at Monsters, Inc. And by that, the first means they were the best. "You coming, Coach?" asked Sully as they walked onto the scare floor, their first day on the job. Mike smiled. "You bet I am." Mike was finally where he belonged. He was working on a scare floor doing a job he loved with his best friend. It really was a dream come true. And that's our story. I hope you liked it. Make sure you like and subscribe and share with your friends. Bye until next time.